There comes a moment in every person's life when God begins to uncover what your eyes were too trusting to notice, what your heart was too loyal to accept, and what your spirit whispered about long before your mind ever caught up. Fake people don't always show up with bad intentions written on their foreheads. They come dressed in familiarity, wrapped in charm, dripping in convenience. They know how to smile without sincerity, how to stand beside you without standing with you, how to speak loyalty while living betrayal. But God sees behind every mask, and when the time is right, he begins the unveiling. God doesn't expose people to embarrass you. He exposes them to protect you. He reveals not to shame you for trusting, but to remove the stumbling blocks that would have drained your peace, delayed your purpose, and damaged your spirit. And he does it in ways so divine, so subtle, so precise that you cannot deny his hand in the process. Sometimes God reveals fake people by disturbing your peace. You don't know why, but the conversation doesn't feel the same anymore. Their presence feels heavier. Their compliments feel rehearsed. Their absence feels louder than their words. That disturbance isn't paranoia, it's divine discomfort. Your spirit sees what your emotions tried to ignore. God is whispering, pay attention, something isn't right. Other times, God exposes them through inconsistencies, not big explosions, quiet contradictions. They celebrate you publicly but resent you privately. They promise support but disappear when you need them most. Their story changes depending on who's listening. Their loyalty shifts depending on what they can gain. These inconsistencies begin stacking up, and suddenly the person you once trusted can no longer hide behind their carefully crafted image. God makes their intentions clash with their actions until you can no longer excuse what you're seeing. Sometimes God allows conversations that reveal motives you weren't meant to carry into your next season. Someone speaks a little too freely. A small comment carries a sharp truth. A joke reveals hidden jealousy. A slip of the tongue exposes the agenda they tried to bury. They said it accidentally, but heaven planned it intentionally. God lets people reveal themselves with their own words so you can stop giving your loyalty to someone who only wanted your access. And then there are moments when God speaks through silence, a silence that tells you more than explanations ever could. Silence after your success, silence when you're hurting, silence when you need them, silence when they realize you've outgrown the role they wanted you to stay in. That silence screams the truth. Their heart was never aligned with your growth. God uses the quiet to show you who was only there for the version of you that benefited them. But God doesn't stop with exposure. He strengthens you. He awakens a boldness you didn't even know you had. A boldness that makes you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop apologizing for choosing peace. A boldness that empowers you to draw boundaries, to walk away from what wounds you, to release what drains you. A boldness that reminds you your worth is not negotiable, your heart is not disposable, and your purpose is not up for discussion. God gives you the courage to confront what you once tolerated. And before God ever releases you from the connection, he gives you revelation. He opens your eyes so clearly that you cannot go back to blindness. He lets you see the truth so deeply that even loneliness can't make you return. He showed you why the relationship had to end before he removes it from your life altogether. Revelation comes first because release requires understanding. Without clarity, you cling to familiarity. But with revelation, you can walk away with peace. God reveals fake people not to harden your heart, but to heal it. Not to make you bitter, but wiser. Not to isolate you, but to elevate you. Because once the wrong people exit your life, the right ones have room to enter. And with every exposure, God is pushing you closer to the future he designed, free from the hands of those who were never meant to hold your destiny. There are moments in life when everything around you looks normal. The conversations sound friendly. The smiles seem genuine. Yet something deep inside you begins to tremble. It's not fear, not anxiety, not overthinking. It's that quiet disruption in your spirit that you can't quite name. This is the first and often the most powerful way God reveals someone who shouldn't be connected to your journey. Long before the person exposes themselves, long before their true intentions slip out, long before their actions contradict their words, God begins working within you. He disturbs your peace to alert you to what your natural eyes cannot see. Peace is one of God's greatest gifts. It's more than an emotion, it is a spiritual indicator. When something or someone is aligned with God's will for your life, peace settles like still water. It calms your thoughts, steadies your choices, and strengthens your confidence. But when something is off, even slightly off, peace becomes disrupted. Not because God is punishing you, but because He is protecting you. The peace disturbance is not loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers in the moments you can't explain. When you hang up the phone and feel drained, though the conversation was fine. When you leave their presence and feel smaller, though nothing offensive was said. When you remember their words and they just don't sit right in your spirit. The uneasiness appears quietly, almost politely, giving you room to notice, reflect, and respond. But many people ignore this divine warning system. They interpret the disturbance as moodiness, assume they're being too sensitive, or convince themselves they're imagining things. They cover it with excuses. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's just stress. Yet your spirit knows what your mind can't articulate. The disturbance is not emotional confusion, it is spiritual intelligence. God disturbs your peace because He knows the danger ahead. He knows the conversation spoken behind your back that you have not yet heard. He knows the envy in someone's heart that they have not yet expressed. He knows the intentions that look supportive but are laced with jealousy, manipulation, or selfishness. Before you walk too far with the wrong person, God disrupts your peace to slow your steps. Before you trust too deeply, He unsettles your spirit. Before you invest your heart, your time, or your energy into someone who will mishandle it, He begins whispering, "Pay attention, something isn't right." This disturbance is often most noticeable in the little things. Details so small they seem irrelevant. They don't celebrate you the way they should. Their encouragement feels shallow. Their compliments seem rehearsed. Their loyalty shifts depending on who is watching. They only reach out when they need something. They get uncomfortable when you succeed. None of this may be obvious at first, but your peace notices before your eyes do. Sometimes God disturbs your peace by creating tension where there used to be comfort. You start feeling tired of carrying the relationship. You grow less enthusiastic about conversations that once flowed naturally. You begin craving distance even when nothing bad has happened. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. God is untangling your spirit from a connection that is not meant to go forward. Other times, the disturbance shows up through conviction. You hear thoughts in your inner dialogue like, "Something is off, don't ignore this," or "Be careful with them." These thoughts come not from fear, but from discernment. Discernment is God's voice disguised as intuition. It gathers data your spirit picks up long before your mind does. And then there are moments when God disturbs your peace by allowing a situation to happen that reveals what you weren't willing to see. A small conflict exposes a big truth. A moment of honesty reveals a hidden motive. Someone else's comment confirms what you already felt. It isn't coincidence, it is divine alignment, pulling the curtain back piece by piece. When God disturbs your peace, He's not trying to make your life harder. He's trying to keep your life from becoming harder. He disturbs your peace not to punish you, but to prevent pain. He is giving you time to listen, reflect, and reposition before the damage happens. The disturbance is the signal. The exposure comes later. There comes a point in every relationship, friendship, or connection when the truth doesn't come crashing in all at once. It slips in quietly through little cracks. These cracks show up as inconsistencies, subtle contradictions in a person's behavior, tone, or intentions. And while your natural mind may brush them aside, your spirit catches every one of them. This is how God begins to reveal what you've been refusing to acknowledge. He highlights inconsistencies, not to shame you for trusting, but to remind you that discernment sees what emotions try to hide. Inconsistencies often begin as small, almost harmless moments. They say they care, yet their actions lack follow-through. They promise support, yet they vanish when you need them most. They speak well in public, yet privately they show irritation or jealousy. They claim loyalty, yet they entertain conversations that undermine you. These contradictions are not accidents, they are signals. Many times people train themselves to overlook them because they don't want to face the discomfort of truth. God knows the heart of every person connected to you. He sees the intentions behind the smile, the motive behind the gesture, the truth behind the words. When someone is not who they present themselves to be, God begins revealing it through patterns that don't align.
It's not the one-time slip-up that exposes them. It's the repeated mismatch between what they say and what they do. You start noticing how their enthusiasm for you changes depending on the season you are in. When you struggle, they appear compassionate. When you rise, they grow distant. When you need encouragement, they offer silence. But when they need something from you, they become attentive.
These shifts are not random. They are God pulling your attention toward the truth you've been avoiding.
One of the ways God highlights inconsistencies is by making you more sensitive to them.
The things you once ignored now feel loud. The comments you once shrugged off now echo in your thoughts. The moments you dismissed as trivial suddenly feel significant. You begin replaying conversations and noticing what was really said. You start remembering behaviors that didn't match the words. It's not paranoia, it's awakening. God is sharpening your vision so you can see the truth with spiritual eyes, not emotional filters. Another way God reveals inconsistencies is through comparison. Not comparison to others, but comparison to previous versions of the same person. You start realizing how different they are when they want something versus when they don't. How they show affection when life is peaceful, but distance themselves when obligations call. How they uplift you when it benefits them, but grow mute when your success outshines their comfort. These inconsistencies point to deeper motives, ones your heart didn't want to confront, but your spirit has sensed for a long time. Sometimes the inconsistency is in their story. Their explanations shift. Their excuses get recycled. Their reasons for their behavior always seem to change depending on who's listening. They rewrite events to protect their image or manipulate your empathy. Their truth bends too easily, like a story rehearsed one moment and forgotten the next. God allows these slips not to embarrass them, but to enlighten you. He brings clarity through contradiction. There are also relational inconsistencies. People who pull close when they need your strength, but keep their distance when you need theirs. People who applaud your vulnerability, but guard their own. People who want access to your heart, but never grant you access to theirs. These unequal patterns are not merely relational flaws, they are spiritual alerts. God is showing you the imbalance, so you stop calling it loyalty when it's actually convenience. One of the most painful inconsistencies God reveals is emotional inconsistency. Someone who acts warm one moment and cold the next. Someone who celebrates you privately but hesitates to acknowledge you publicly. Someone who wants your presence but resents your growth. These emotional swings are not random moods. They are indicators of internal conflict. Something within them does not genuinely align with something within you. And then there are the inconsistencies you defend, the ones you justify because you don't want to lose the person, the ones you excuse because you've invested so much time, the ones you minimize because acknowledging them feels like admitting you misjudged the relationship. But God refuses to let you build your future on unstable ground. He keeps bringing these contradictions to your attention, not to wound you, but to wake you up. Inconsistencies are the fingerprints of hidden truth. They expose what the person tries to conceal. They uncover the parts of them that words cannot mask. They show you who someone really is when they are not performing. And while it may hurt to see it, God highlights these inconsistencies so you can finally stop pretending not to see. There are moments when God doesn't expose someone through confrontation or conflict, but through conversation. Simple, ordinary, unexpected conversations that unlock what a person has been trying so hard to hide. Words have weight, and when someone's motives aren't pure, their own speech becomes the doorway through which truth escapes. God doesn't need drama to reveal character. He uses dialogue. Sometimes it's not what a person says directly, but what slips out when their guard is down, when they feel comfortable, offended, jealous, or too confident to keep pretending. Those moments are not accidental, they are divinely orchestrated. Hidden motives often live beneath polished sentences and practiced smiles. People can mask intentions for a season, but conversations always contain clues. A comment made too quickly, a joke that wasn't really a joke, a question that didn't come from curiosity, but from envy. A suggestion disguised as concern, but rooted in control. These subtle fragments reveal more about the heart than any grand declaration ever could. God allows these moments to surface because he knows how easily you can be misled when you rely only on what others want you to see. There are times when God might allow someone to become irritated, not to create conflict, but to loosen the filter they use to hide their true thoughts. Frustration exposes what flattery hides. A person who seems supportive suddenly reveals competition. Someone who acted caring suddenly exposes resentment. Anger has a way of pulling truth to the surface. And God uses that moment to show you what patience alone could never reveal. Sometimes the revealing comes through a casual conversation with someone else. You hear something said about you that this person didn't think would reach your ears. It might be a comment that contradicts the loyalty they profess to you. It might be a confession they made in another room, showing that their private opinions aren't aligned with their public support. God lets information travel, not to stir gossip, but to give you clarity. What someone says behind your back is often the purest version of their heart. There are also conversations where people expose their motives indirectly. They start comparing themselves to you, diminishing your achievements, or questioning your decisions in ways that are framed as advice. They may slip into subtle competition, trying to make themselves appear wiser, stronger, or more stable than you. Their words reveal their desire not to walk with you, but to outrun you. God brings these moments to your attention so you can hear the intention behind the tone, not just the vocabulary. Sometimes God allows a person to talk too long. A simple question turns into a confession they didn't plan to make. Their story contradicts a previous story. Their explanation reveals they were watching you in ways that make no sense for someone who claimed disinterest. They accidentally expose resentment that was supposed to be hidden. Talking without preparation causes the truth to leak out, and God lets it happen at the exact moment you need to hear it. And then there are conversations meant for revelation, not resolution. You may try to get clarity, and instead of answering directly, the person deflects, blames, or becomes defensive. Their inability to be honest becomes a revelation in itself. Evasion is communication. Their refusal to answer simply shows what they don't want you to discover. God uses these conversations to highlight the gap between what they pretend to be and who they actually are. In all these moments, God isn't trying to stir conflict. He's allowing truth to rise through the natural flow of dialogue. He lets people reveal themselves with their own words, because once you hear the truth, you can no longer be bound by the illusion. There are seasons when God's loudest message isn't delivered through a sermon, a sign, or a supernatural moment, but through silence. Deep, undeniable, unsettling silence. It's the kind of silence that follows a conversation that suddenly doesn't feel the same. The kind that hangs in the air after someone you trusted stops showing up the way they once did. The kind that speaks louder than apologies, louder than excuses, louder than carefully crafted words. Silence has a voice, and when God uses it, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Silence reveals shifts long before behavior does. When someone's heart changes toward you, their silence becomes the first clue. Not because they are busy, but because something in their intention has shifted. The energy they once gave willingly is now restrained. The consistency they once offered has become optional. Their presence isn't missing, it's withdrawn. That withdrawal is not random. It's a divine spotlight showing you that what once flowed naturally has now become forced. God often uses silence to stop you from over-explaining, over-chasing, or over-investing in someone who has already checked out emotionally. We tend to fill silence with assumptions, with excuses, with hope that maybe things will return to what they were. But God allows the quiet to stretch so long that you are forced to confront reality. Silence becomes the mirror that words could never be. It reveals the true temperature of a relationship, not the one you wish it had. There are moments when silence exposes motives more clearly than confession ever could. A person who suddenly becomes silent when you succeed is speaking without words. Their lack of celebration communicates envy. Their absence communicates discomfort. A true friend rises in your elevation. A counterfeit retreats. Silence becomes the measurement of their heart. A person's reaction to your blessings is often the clearest indication of their true intentions toward you. Sometimes the silence isn't from them. It's from God. He quiets your desire for certain relationships. He takes away the urge to call, the need to explain yourself, the compulsion to keep fixing something that has drained you. You try to force the connection, but something inside you stays still. That stillness is God saying, let it be. Silences your emotions to strengthen your discernment. When God hushes your heart, it's because he's preparing you to hear something deeper. God also speaks through the silence that comes after disappointments. You may wait for an apology that never arrives, for clarity that never comes, for closure the other person refuses to give. But in that empty space, God begins to settle your spirit. He shows you that closure doesn't come from people, it comes from truth. The silence isn't punishment, it's revelation. It's God showing you that if someone cared to stay, they wouldn't leave you waiting in confusion. There are seasons when God removes voices from your life to help you recognize how dependent you become on the wrong ones. He withdraws the noise of opinion, flattery, emotional manipulation, or subtle control. When these voices go quiet, you realize how much they influence your decisions, how much they shape your self-worth, how much you relied on their approval. Silence exposes dependence. It reveals the places where people became louder in your life than God did. Sometimes God uses silence to reset your spirit. You stop feeling the urge to argue. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself. You stop trying to convince someone to care. This internal quietness isn't resignation, it's liberation. When God silences your reactions, he is teaching you to respond from wisdom, not emotion. In silence, strength is reborn. There are conversations God won't let you have because the truth would fall on unwilling ears. There are explanations He won't let you give because they would only reopen old wounds. There are people He won't let you chase because the lesson has already been learned. When God doesn't permit dialogue, it's because the silence is doing the work that words never could.
Silence is also where God reveals the difference between loneliness and peace. Loneliness comes from missing someone who is gone. Peace comes from realizing you're better without the version of them you were holding on to. The quiet becomes comforting because it's honest. It shows you that your spirit breathes easier without the confusion, without the instability, without the mixed signals disguised as affection. And there are moments when silence becomes your answer. When someone stops trying, stops showing effort, stops demonstrating care, their silence tells you everything their words kept hidden. Silence doesn't lie. Silence doesn't pretend. Silence doesn't manipulate. It simply reveals.
There comes a turning point in your journey where God does more than reveal the intentions of others. He strengthens something within you that you didn't even know was there. A boldness, a power, a spiritual confidence begins to rise, and it often appears right at the moment when you feel the most tired, the most uncertain, or the most emotionally drained.
At first, it doesn't feel like boldness. It feels like exhaustion.
It feels like the end of your patience. It feels like you can't keep tolerating what has been silently weakening you. But what looks like weariness is actually the first stage of awakening. God is stirring a courage within you that begins by making you unwilling to stay where you've been. Boldness doesn't always roar when it begins. Sometimes it starts as a whisper, a simple thought that says, I don't have to put up with this anymore. I deserve better than this silence. I'm worth more than this inconsistency. That whisper is God strengthening your identity, reminding you of your value, and preparing you to stand where you once would have bowed. The more you listen to that whisper, the louder it grows. You start reclaiming the boundaries you let others cross. You begin saying no to what drains you and yes to what heals you. You stop prioritizing people who treat you like an option. This is not attitude, this is awakening. As God awakens boldness, He shifts the way you think. You stop explaining your worth. You stop negotiating your dignity. You stop apologizing for protecting your heart. Your thoughts become clearer because your spirit is no longer trying to cling to what God is trying to remove. Boldness sharpens your perception. You start seeing people's patterns without trying to rewrite them. You recognize manipulation without falling for it. You notice inconsistency and refuse to excuse it. The confusion fog lifts, and in its place comes certainty. This certainty isn't pride, it's clarity birthed by God. Boldness also emerges in how you carry yourself. Where you once walked cautiously, you begin to walk confidently. Where you once kept quiet to keep peace, you start speaking truth to protect peace. Where you once gave people endless chances, you begin recognizing when grace becomes self-destruction. God strengthens your spine in moments where you used to fold. You confront situations you once fled. You express feelings you once buried. You draw lines you once blurred. This boldness doesn't make you aggressive. It makes you whole. One of the most powerful parts of this awakening is what happens to your voice. The same voice that trembled when you tried to advocate for yourself now speaks with authority. The voice that once stuttered with fear now speaks with conviction. The voice that once stayed silent to avoid conflict now understands that silence can be a prison. God equips your voice with truth, and that truth frees you from the opinions of others. You no longer feel the need to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer beg for clarity from those who choose confusion. Your voice becomes anchored in what God is doing within you. This boldness doesn't only empower you to confront people, It empowers you to confront yourself. You face the parts of you that tolerated too much. You address the habits that made you small. You acknowledge the fears that kept you tied to the wrong places. You begin healing the wounds that made you accept less than you deserved. Boldness gives you the strength to stop blaming yourself for what wasn't your fault and the courage to take responsibility for what is. It pushes you toward growth, even when growth is uncomfortable. As God awakens boldness, he also awakens detachment. Not numbness, but clarity-driven detachment. You stop chasing after people who consistently walked away from you. You stop trying to fix people who had no intention of changing. You stop sacrificing your peace for relationships that only survived when you made all the effort. Detachment becomes holy when it's guided by God. It becomes the way you protect your destiny from those who were never meant to shape it. And then there is a boldness that rises in your purpose. Where you once doubted yourself, you now move with assurance. Where you hesitated, you now step forward. Where you procrastinated, you now pursue. God reveals that the strength you thought you lost was actually being rebuilt. He shows you that the confidence you prayed for was growing inside you while you were fighting your quiet battles. You realize the betrayal didn't break you. It birthed a strength you didn't know existed. This boldness is not loud, but it is unshakable. It doesn't seek approval because it comes from God. It doesn't depend on applause because it is anchored in truth. It doesn't fear loss because it recognizes that anything God takes away was never meant to stay. Boldness becomes the evidence that you survived what was meant to silence you, and now you stand stronger than you ever imagined. There are seasons when God begins to show you the truth about a person, a relationship, or a situation long before he ever removes it from your life. This can feel confusing, even painful, because you start seeing things you're not ready to confront and feeling things you don't yet know how to act on. But this is how God works. He gives revelation before release because he knows that if you don't understand the why, you will return to what wounded you the moment you feel lonely, nostalgic, or uncertain. Revelation is the preparation. Release is the transition. One must come before the other. Revelation often begins subtly. You start noticing behaviors that never bothered you before. You begin sensing patterns that suddenly feel too familiar. You catch yourself thinking, I never noticed that. Or why did that affect me so deeply this time? It's not because the person has changed overnight. It's because God has opened your eyes. He is letting you see beyond the surface, beyond the charm, beyond the excuses, beyond the potential. He shows you the reality you kept disguised with hope. Revelation arrives like light slipping through a crack in the door. Small at first, but it grows until it illuminates the entire room. When God gives revelation, he is giving clarity, and clarity is often uncomfortable. It forces you to acknowledge truths you tried to bury under loyalty or attachment. You begin to see how much energy you poured into someone who gave you so little in return. You notice the emotional imbalance. You recognize the manipulation wrapped in kindness. You see the selfishness hiding behind convenience. You understand why your spirit felt restless. These realizations are not coincidences. They are divine conversations happening within you. Revelation often exposes what your heart didn't want to admit. You may have prayed for signs, and now God is showing you the signs clearly and repeatedly. Conversations begin to reveal contradictions. Silence exposes disinterest. Distance reveals priorities. Small conflicts begin to magnify unresolved issues. Situations arise that show you how someone truly feels about you. These are not random moments. They are the unfolding of truth designed to free you from illusions. Sometimes revelation comes through people. Someone mentions something that confirms your quiet suspicions. A comment slips out that shifts your entire understanding. A trusted friend reflects back to you what you've been refusing to see. God uses others to highlight what you might overlook on your own. This isn't gossip or negativity. It's clarity wrapped in accountability. Other times, revelation comes through inner conviction. You begin feeling a heaviness in your spirit every time you get close to certain people. You sense God pulling you back, whispering, pay attention. I'm showing you something. You may try to brush it off, but the feeling won't leave. That discomfort is not emotional instability, it's spiritual intelligence. God is revealing what your heart is struggling to process. Revelation can be painful because it often contradicts what you wanted. It challenges the version of the story you built in your mind. It forces you to confront the difference between what you hoped for and what is actually happening. It may make you feel betrayed, disappointed, or foolish, but God does not reveal to shame you. He reveals to protect you. He shows you the truth so you won't keep investing in lies. The important thing to understand is that revelation doesn't mean release happens immediately. God doesn't always remove people or situations the moment you see the truth. Sometimes he allows them to stay a little longer, not to harm you, but to complete the lesson. You may find yourself wondering why the relationship hasn't ended yet, why the connection still lingers, why the situation hasn't shifted. It's because revelation must sink deep enough into your spirit that you won't fight God when he tells you to let go. Release requires understanding. Without understanding, you would cling to familiarity even when God is leading you into freedom. You would confuse loneliness with love. You would confuse memories with purpose. You would mistake emotional attachment for spiritual alignment. Revelation prepares you to detach without bitterness. It equips you to walk away in wisdom, not anger. It allows you to release without regret because you finally see clearly. God gives revelation before release because he wants you to leave with clarity, not confusion. He wants you to graduate, not repeat. He wants you to move forward with healed sight, not bruised vision. Revelation is the foundation that makes release possible.